Thanks so much, Peter. As Peter mentioned, my name is Kristen Cambell. I'm with the National Conference on Citizenship, and it's great to be here, and it is my distinct honor and anxiety-ridden privilege to be your very first speaker for this important conference. So I see very many familiar faces in the crowd, and apologies in advance to you folks because you've probably seen this presentation before and could be up here and recite it for me, but I hope I can still share something new with you today. And for the folks who I don't know, I'm honored and humbled to be here and to have the opportunity to share a little bit more about my work and learn about yours as well. So, a quick rundown for those of you who might not be familiar with the National Conference on Citizenship. At NCOC, our driving philosophy is that we believe that everyone has the power to make a difference in how their communities and their country thrive. We were founded in 1946 by Presidents Eisenhower and Truman and received a congressional charter in 1953. Our mission is to convene, incubate, and evaluate modern citizenship. We are a 67-year-old institution, and we try to understand what actions, attitudes, and behaviors shape our citizenry today. We understand that that's probably different than it was in 1946 or in 1953. We want to understand how people give back to their communities and what it is that motivates them to do so. In order to do that, we explore and possess the largest civic data set on civic participation, and we work to spark dialogues around it through events and discussions and use it to inform policy, investments, and programs that aim to strengthen civic life and build community well-being. So for the purpose of, that is shockingly small, I apologize for that. That's, okay. We're just going to go with it. So for the purpose of this presentation, I want to focus briefly on my last point, which is in about 8-point font up there, how we use data to build prosperous communities, which we do through what we call our civic health initiatives. In 2006, in partnership with many folks in this room, we began collecting data on the civic actions, attitudes, and behaviors of our citizenry. We like to think of this as measuring our civic stock in the same way that we measure our economic stock or our educational assessments. We believe that the most powerful force in American democracy is the connection between and among citizens. And we want to understand how and why those connections exist and what can be done to continue to foster them. We produce annual assessments of civic health nationally, but we also now do so on a more localized level in states and cities across the country. This data has been used for a variety of purposes, including civic education legislation, government investments, nonprofit and foundation measurement impacts, and a whole host of other activities. We break down this data as much as we can to really understand a community, whether that community is defined geographically, demographically, or by an issue area. We look at a wide variety of indicators, everything from political involvement to service to philanthropy to social connection to belonging to groups to working with neighbors to fix or solve a community problem. Collectively, we try to think of civic health as the way that we explore the process of how individuals create the communities in which they want to live and work. We believe that civic involvement is often misclassified as a nice but not necessary activity. It's thought of as knowing the 3 branches of government or serving at your local soup kitchen, but it is not always viewed, and we think it should be, as a critical channel through which social problems are solved. We get continually asked, why does civic engagement really matter? People are hurting. We're in an economic downturn, and people can't afford such luxuries as giving back. And we understand that these are challenging times, and in a lot of ways, people are turning inward to take care of personal needs so that in order to be able to prepare themselves to give back to community. But we don't believe that these are mutually exclusive activities. We wanted to understand if and how civic involvement can actually have an impact on our economic vitality. So in 2011, we commissioned an issue brief that looks like this in partnership with Circle, with Swaro Seminar, with Civic Enterprises, and with the National Constitution Center. And we found that a community's civic health had a great impact on their economic health, particularly around unemployment. So what is it that we found? We found that states and cities that had higher rates of civic involvement in 2006 experienced less growth in unemployment between 2006 and 2010. We believe that this is a really significant finding, particularly in light of all the jobs discussion that's captivating our political dialogue, because at the core of this finding is connection. It's relationships, it's people, it's community, and it's what a lot of us in this room would call social capital. So what we really think this means is that if you care about and invest in your neighbors will care about and invest in you. These findings were true even when we controlled for economic variables such as the housing market and the presence of oil and natural gas in a community. We actually found that all the civic indicators, the 5 civic indicators that we tested, were more significant predictors of a community's ability to withstand the economic downturn than all 8 of the economic variables that we were able to control for. We also found that this was true not only on a state level, but on a city level as well. And it was true in inverse directions, meaning low civic health was correlated with higher unemployment growth, and higher unemployment growth, or lower unemployment growth was correlated with higher civic health. Peter, did I get that right? Okay, good. So while these findings were preliminary, we feel like they warrant further exploration. And so in doing so, we've developed this theory about what communities need to be prosperous. It's financial, human, and social capital. I probably don't have to tell folks in this room what social capital means, but as our friend Robert Putnam would describe it, it's the collective value of all social networks and the inclinations that arise from these networks to do things for each other. So it's really about looking beyond oneself to the impact they have on those around them, and we think that this is the inherent basis of civic participation. Some people would say that financial capital begets human capital, which then creates social capital. We actually believe that it starts with social capital. And through social capital, you get the conditions necessary to cultivate financial capital, which in turn then builds human capital. Therefore, we posit the relationship that for a community to have social and economic health, its citizens must fully participate in civic life. We know that there's a relationship between civic engagement and community attachment. That is the level to which a person feels emotionally connected to their communities. And research by the Knight Foundation connects this attachment with growth in gross domestic product, which in turn affects the amount of products and businesses in a community, which is a direct contribution to their employment rates. So, you're probably asking, oh, that's supposed to say tell me more, but I guess tell me still works. So you're probably asking why we think that this equation is true. We believe that civic involvement helps cultivate the environment that's necessary to help weather a recession. We posit 6 hypotheses for consideration, mostly based on the importance of attitude, connections, and skills, which are the behavioral characteristics that are generated by civic activities. So first, we posit the human capital hypothesis, in which we think participation in civic society helps people build the skills, confidence, and habits that make them employable and strengthen the networks that help them find jobs. Second is the networking hypothesis, which suggests that people get jobs through their social networks, including their neighbors, service organizations, and groups to which they belong. Third, civic participation spreads information. So we have an information hypothesis, whether it's job postings, newsletters, community issues, places with better information flow make it easier for individuals to find jobs, for businesses to find employees, and for citizens to communicate with their government. Next is our trust hypothesis, which suggests that participation in civil society is strongly correlated with trust in other people. Trust leads to group membership builds trust, and facilitates information flow. Trusting relationships are more likely to instill the confidence necessary to invest, hire, and build businesses and communities. Fifth, the good government hypothesis, which suggests that communities with stronger civil societies are more likely to have good governments. This leads to higher performing schools, inclusive and resonant public policies that affect unemployment and social services. And lastly, the attachment hypothesis, which suggests that civic engagement encourages people to feel attached to their communities, which increases the odds that one will invest, spend, and hire there. So what's next? We, in partnership with Circle and the Knight Foundation and our Indelible Working Group, we are exploring each of these hypotheses further in order to commission some additional research in this area. We will release it at the 67th Annual National Conference on Citizenship, which is taking place on September 14th in Philadelphia. You're all invited, ncoc.net/conference, and we're hosting it in partnership with the National Constitution Center. And because I'm sure that you are on the edge of your seat waiting to know what we are finding, here is a little sneak peek for this group. In addition to further exploring the hypotheses that I've already mentioned, we are also exploring not only the economic value of civic behavior, but of nonprofits in communities. And we're finding that the presence and growth of the nonprofit sector plays a critical role in its underlying economic health, showing that the density of nonprofits in a city could account for up to 1.5% of its unemployment rate. This is critical as we already know that the nonprofit sector employs 10.7 million Americans, makes up over 10% of the workforce, and channels almost $300 billion of investment into communities each year. So, my time is up. Peter just gave me the 1-minute warning, and I am out of cheesy photos. So I would love to speak with you all further. My information is here. We've also posted a discussion on our website where you can comment on each of these hypotheses individually if you have feedback or further resources in those areas. And I hope that you will all join us in Philadelphia. So thanks again for having me.